Well, first, I'd like you to welcome to our second webinar in our series on engaging folks in student surveys. This is the second part of our series, which is engaging students in classroom surveys. So part of this is, it's part of a series that My Student Survey is working for to engage a variety of stakeholders. We started off with engaging teachers in student surveys. We're now looking at engaging students in classroom surveys, and for an upcoming one, we'll be doing engaging administrators in student surveys as well. So the topics for the agenda today are the following. Some of the strategies that we've used successfully in our survey administrations with districts and states across the country have been, first one being using cognitive interviews, and we'll talk about what those are. But we want to make sure, do students understand the questions that they're being asked? The second one is using strategic sampling. So if students are taking surveys too many times, do they continue to stay engaged? And the third one is that thinking about using the creation of a video intro for these surveys to help provide a little bit of the context from the perspective of students about why they're taking the survey. And the final one is creating a conversation about survey results between teachers and students. And so students get an insight into how these results are being used. So there's some other topics that are relevant to this area of engaging students in surveys, but are not necessarily a part of the scope of this. First is thinking about it at school-level student surveys. And a very similar and related note, school-level climate surveys and so forth are relevant to the new version of ESSA as these indicators of school quality. So keep an eye out for a webinar on this for late February. We'll be doing it in partnership with a couple different organizations to help some states kind of think through those. So for any more information about this, please don't hesitate to reach out to us about it. So the first strategy we talked about are cognitive interviews. So we want to make sure that we're implementing a survey that has undergone cognitive interviews. Now, these are interviews, they determine whether a student interprets the question in a way that matches what the question objective is. So it's basically asking the students, what do you think this means? Can you give an example of it? And it makes sure that the student is interpreting it the same way that we were trying to, and is addressing that behavior. So it's not just, sometimes it can highlight problematic items, but the really helpful part of this is that it can also identify the specific word or the specific part of the question that might be problematic. And so it allows them to be able to improve the quality of the question. Here's an example of a protocol that it goes through where asking the question, what do you think this means? You can say, you know, what part of the question didn't make sense? What part could we change to make it easier? Can you describe an example of when your teacher does it? And then you use these responses and you assign cognitive validity scores. The reason you do this is because you want to make sure that if a student runs into a question that they don't understand, that's going to cause them to be frustrated and have less access to be able to answer the questions on the survey. We're really trying to gear towards that access part of things. So any way that you're able to allow students to make sure they know what they mean and feel successful is great. There's some other methods, too, that you could use in terms of access, which we use some audio playback of items. So for every single item, they're able to hit that little play button and hear an audio file playing that reads that item. Now, this could be for accommodations and special education or just students who need a little extra help in reading. But both cognitive interviews and these audio parts are really talking about how can we make sure they access the question, understand them, and feel successful. The second one is talking about sampling. So the pieces we're really concerned about here are we're thinking about survey fatigue and making sure that students don't feel like they've done this over and over and don't want to take the survey. So we've done some research that basically indicates that when you get to about 18 to 20 surveys, the overall classroom does not change greatly by adding additional surveys. It's kind of like if you were a teacher and you knew that when you added in a homework grade near the end of the semester, that it didn't really change a lot of the student's average. So it's a similar way as that once you get this 8 to 20 range, you have enough for it. But this must also be balanced with buy-in. So you don't want teachers to feel like, well, this is just, you guys surveyed one class and that was my worst class, therefore I'm not going to pay attention to the results. So you want them to feel it's representative, but you also know that this is the minimum number that you need, and you don't want students to take it over and over again. So some recommendations for that are generally in the middle and high school level to have students take the survey during the same 1 or 2 class periods. For instance, it could be that you have all the second period students and all the third period students take the survey during that time period, so you don't have a lot of overlap and students taking the survey over and over and over again. At the elementary level, you can devise a plan where the students take the survey twice. So it could be about their homeroom teacher as well as one of their specialist teachers, say the special ed or the art teacher. And so every student will take the survey only twice, but every teacher gets results from it. So this can go towards prevent sampling the survey fatigue so that they are staying engaged with the survey when they're taking it. The third strategy is to think through creating videos to be shown to students just before taking the survey. So this explains the details. It explains why are they taking it, what will the questions look like, and how will the results be used. These are important factors in terms of I know why I'm doing this, therefore I'll be more engaged in the survey process. Some best practices that go through are doing a local video created by students. And these can be shown either the week of survey administration or potentially by proctors prior to administration. And I'm going to show a short clip of the video, which is an example from Baltimore City Schools, in which they were able to use these use students in class to be able to show what that looked like.
So when you go she in your story, the person who's reading doesn't know if you're talking about the dog or the girl. Oh, I get it now. Thank you so much for going over. Do you want to know something? Everyone likes to hear how they're doing, even teachers. Teachers? Really? Yes, even teachers. So who's going to give you feedback? You already know this thing. That's why you speak up. Not exactly. Even students can actually teach me a great deal. That's why you'll be filling out the student survey you'll teach us tomorrow. Kids are going to tell teachers how we think they are doing. Absolutely. Your classmates' opinion means a great deal to me and how I teach. Because when do people care about what kids think? Actually, this gives you the opportunity to tell me what I'm doing well and where I need to improve. You'll listen to me? Sure. In fact, what you tell me will help me improve my teacher so you can learn more. But is this for a grade? Of course not. You will be able to tell me things like, how's my teaching, what's it like in my classroom, and much more. Wow, I didn't think anybody cared about what I thought. And this will help me become a better teacher and help me become a better student. That's the idea, because one day I want you to go to college and be successful in your career. Students aren't only about to say. You need to know how they're doing too. Remember, this is not a test, and there's no right or wrong answer. And since your names are not on the survey, your teacher will not know who gave them the answer. What you say helps them teach you better, helps you become more college and career ready. So take this survey seriously. Tell your teachers what you're doing well and where they need to improve.
Great. So that's just an example of something you could use as a video to show as an introduction, and it gets a lot of positive reception when done by students, for students, and they have part of that process. So the next strategy I want to talk through is training teachers on how to discuss the results. So the conversations can be difficult, but it's really powerful for students, and it's going to have an impact on engagement in the future survey. So if they've seen before, hey, I remember when my teacher was talking about how they use the results, then when they're taking it in the future, they're more likely to be engaged because they've seen that direct connection. So teachers, this is a difficult conversation. Teachers may not know how to have this conversation without having a little bit of training. So the training could include a couple things. The first one is how to ask students for more details. So, I heard you say that I need to do this. Can you tell me a little bit about more of that? Can you give me some examples for that? And walking them through that conversation in a way that's not intimidating for students, in a way that's getting them useful information about how they can adjust their course. And the second piece is how to create and share an action plan based on these survey results. So that's that first step of how do you create an action plan from the results? And then now what pieces of those can I share? And so it could be things like, hey, I heard that you said that I needed to review more at the end of class. So now we'll be doing a 2-minute, quick bell review at the end. And that's what we're going to be using in response to that. And so thinking about specific actions in response to your areas of focus. So these could either be online trainings using a pre-recorded webinar of having some teachers talk about what they do and some best practices, or it could be used with either a train-the-trainer model for principals as well as instructional coaches and so forth to be able to do that. So some next steps for that. The first one is develop a validation framework that includes these cognitive interviews, or you need to require that from a survey that you choose to adopt. The second piece is, as you're going through, is thinking about the number of times that a student takes the survey when you're coming up with your strategic sampling plan, and make sure that you avoid survey fatigue, which can lead to a lack of engaged students. The third one is just thinking about the preparation of the creation and thinking about the timeline of when you'll need it for these internal videos that you can show ahead of time to build understanding of why you're doing the survey. And then thinking about creating that training materials ahead of time so teachers can, it's for teachers so that when they see the results, they can have some strategies and some help and support in how to have that conversation with students to be able to, A, get more information for the teacher, but B, they'll engage the students because they see the relevance and they see how it's directly applied to their instruction. So I'm going to stop. I want to thank you for that participation on that part of it. I want to stop the recording at this point.